Gladiator 2 is the sequel to 2000's Gladiator, directed by Ridley Scott 24 years ago, and is once again helmed by Scott, who is now 86 years old. Man, he just keeps on going. 16 years after witnessing the death of the revered hero Maximus at the hands of his uncle, Lucius is forced to enter the Colosseum after his home is conquered by the tyrannical emperors who now lead Rome with an iron fist. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, Lucius must look to his past to find strength and honour to return the glory of Rome to its people. I watched Gladiator the year it came out in 2000 on VHS. I recently covered it on this channel, so go take a look after this. It's a stone cold classic, and ever since its release, a sequel has been touted. But finally it's here. But was it worth the wait? Well, to start, on the surface, Gladiator 2 has everything you'd expect from a sequel to such a historically pinpointed film by a director that time and again delivers sweeping spectacle and gets great performances from actors. You thought Rome and the Colosseum looked good in the original? This just makes it look like they shot there. Sure, it's the elevated world of Ridley's Roman Empire, but damn, it looks really good. The opening battle sequence is visually jaw-dropping, and any CGI present throughout the film is mostly great. I audibly gasped at one or two shots of Rome, and the sequence at the start with hundreds of ships sailing into battle just floored me. There are some mega names in this, and the biggest of them is Denzel Washington. He's so entrancing as Macronus and massively impactful to the story. He's easily the best thing in this film, and in my opinion, his entrance and presence from then on saves this from being a pretty middling experience. Big positive shout outs to Pedro Pascal as General Acacius and Joseph Quinn's off the scale, crazy and searing performance as Emperor Geta. I could watch this guy all day. There are moments in this that made me think this was special. Certainly as the latter part of the film develops, it became something unexpected and made me think the fall of Rome that's alluded to in the titles is something we'd get to see in full. There's two in the shadows plays for power that cross swords, and I thought these were the most compelling parts of the story, but they come way later on in the film, and it felt like it was tussling really hard with its need to call back to Maximus and the original film, whilst also delivering on new ideas. I didn't want to sit here comparing film for film, as I thought this might be a different thing, but there's no way, as Ridley and the writers have produced something that hinges and constantly references the first. The way this is written made me not care about Lucius for the longest time, if at all. Paul Mescal is great in action moments, but in dramatic scenes, he plays this really flat in my opinion. He seems bored all the time and painfully monotone. I also do not know why they gunned for the exact same setup from the start, with Lucius sort of replaying Maximus's playbook. He's a leader, his wife is killed, and he sets upon revenge after being enslaved and becoming a gladiator, and so on and so on. It clips along so much faster, but expects you to already care for him like you did for Maximus. It's not nearly as compelling, and treading this ground in this way just felt wasteful. For example, Maximus has a real connection to his peers in Gladiator. They work as a team throughout, and a genuine bond is formed. This idea is clearly present here, but it's handled so badly. Like in the first two main fights, Lucius basically ends up on his own fighting off a dog monkey. Yes, that's what it looks like, a really weird hybrid dog monkey, and in the second, a big burly gladiator. He gets pretty limited help from his teammates, and you get no inkling as to what they're doing in the fight as well. The first knew to create a bond in these moments, and this one just forgets anyone else is in the fight most of the time. So when he goes to lead them later in the film, it feels so unearned. That's just one example of calling back on similar setups, but just not having the heart or the emotion of the first. There are several of these moments, and they are the least interesting parts of this film. But the Emperor twins, Macronus's play for power through Lucius, and General Acacius, who also has aspects of Maximus in that he's a worn-out general who wants to change things, are the more interesting and better formulated parts of this story in my opinion. Like I said earlier, Denzel is the best thing here. He steals this away from a shallow and rather two-dimensional protagonist. I just would have loved to know how the twins got into power. They do so much story heavy lifting in explaining everything about Lucius, Lucius, but not a hint of how these two clowns got to where they are. Some fun inclusions here that definitely caught my interest are Tim McKinney as a debaucherous and foolish senator who plays brilliantly off Denzel, and Matt Lucas as the Colosseum's master of ceremonies. Bit of a weird one, but okay. Seeing the seedy, politicking underbelly of Rome was great because it felt fresh. These aspects were where my enjoyment came from and turned this from being not great to entertaining. I honestly feel like this would have been a better movie if it hadn't called back to Gladiator and Maximus quite so much, and also had to connect it as this emotional linchpin for Lucius later in the movie. It is mentioned plainly in the latest trailer, so I'm going to talk about an aspect of the story here, but it might come off as a spoiler. I've chaptered this video, so if you haven't seen the film, maybe skip this bit. Okay, so Maximus being Lucius's father. Sorry, but it's clearly outlined. He has a son who's the same age in the first. Yes, they obviously have a past relationship, but for him to be conceiving both with Lucilla and his wife at the same time is daft in my opinion. Frankly, having rewatched Gladiator recently, it's a pivotal point in the film when he says Lucius is safe, not because he's the dad, but because he was a dad, and he understands how that feels. But in Gladiator 2, it's revealed and used readily that Maximus is Lucius's father, and it just didn't land for me. It totally dishonours the first for me, whether Ridley was genuinely alluding to it in the first or not. When it came up, I just felt deflated because here it was being used as this emotional tool to get Lucius in the armour and doing Maximus-like things because, yay, member berries. I know that that's possibly something that a lot of people will like about this, but just from a personal standpoint and loving the first film, this is the thing that put me off. Big time. Additionally, the emotion doesn't hit because the soundtrack doesn't hit. It's a flat, run-of-the-mill conveyor of action music bookended with borrowing Hans Zimmer's mega score of the first film. It just had nothing. I even listened to it today to double check, and I'm never listening to that again. The only interesting bits are the Hans Zimmer bits. Cinematography wise as well, it's just not got the style and grit of Gladiator that made it feel so real. Sure, it pings of digitally shot perfection, it's nice, but it lacks style. Also though, yes, this is a hyper-realised Roman Empire, but the first knew how far to take things to keep things in the realm of believability. But sharks in the Colosseum. Also, if I were to rank battles in the Colosseum on how exciting they were, this would rank the lowest. It felt weirdly empty and boring, much like good chunks of this film. The fact Gladiator 2 opens with a paint-animated look back over Gladiator for a solid couple of minutes just smacks of the producers being scared of the shadow of the previous film. They've written it like that too, and like I said, I feel like the most boring bits are when they lean heavily on the first film. But I do predict that a large majority of people will enjoy this aspect. For all my criticism though, no one does epics on this scale like Ridley, and this was fun just for that. Denzel made it worth it. I just really enjoyed him here. Getting to go back to this well-realised Rome was a treat. There's also great gnarly gory bits, like more full-on than the first in some cases. Like I mentioned earlier, my favourite part is the latter part of this film. It kind of builds into this great crescendo, and actually it became a really good film for me in that moment. I was slapping my thigh, which is a sign I'm enjoying a film. It's a weird little tick that I have. That bit really got me, and I got a lot out of that end bit where the Roman army are kind of coming up to Rome and everything's kind of coalescing and there's this big fight. How they get to that stage is just so weirdly cobbled together and a bit convoluted, and I feel like the writers were writing themselves into a spin to make sure that enough of Maximus and his story was invoked into the film, but that there was this other thing coming in and that they were combining properly, and they try their best. They're doing really well with trying to include Maximus in, but him not be like known by everyone, that he's known by the right people and it's written in well, but it just didn't feel like a naturally progressive thing. It felt clunky. Finally, emotionally, this doesn't climb to the heights of Gladiator, not even close, and I don't think it's unfair to compare considering it massively invokes Gladiator throughout. The last shot of the film establishes my feelings towards a good chunk of this. It's deeply unnecessary and a bit odd, even if it is pretty entertaining. And that's it. it for Gladiator 2. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe and say hello in the comments, or try this video next. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.